I am fascinated by your story, but also incredibly creeped out because you were stalked for 3 years and it was completely random how it all started. So talk to me about what life was like beforehand and then how this all came about.
Yeah, so it's funny. Looking back, it all started in a way that was quite sort of innocuous that I didn't even identify at the time. So I was a sort of newly separated, late 30-something mum. I had my kids in, the local footy, and I was attending a couple of those sort of social gatherings. And I had this really strange encounter at one of those catch-ups where this woman who had sort of been on the peripheral of where we were all sort of hanging out walked past me and sort of said, "Are you taking photos of Adam?" And at that stage, this was just simply one of the dads. He was there at the function, and I obviously was not taking photos of him. I was taking photos of my son. And so I sort of just mumbled, "Oh, I'm just taking photos of my son." And she just walked straight on past. And I thought, oh, okay, maybe she wasn't talking to me, and had a little chuckle with the woman next to me and moved on. And then later that night, I got this message request on Facebook from this woman to say, "Oh, look, I'm sorry about that comment today. I didn't actually mean anything by it. I just wanted some photos for the footy page." So I just thought, oh, okay, this woman must know somebody there, and she was just, just a bit socially awkward. So we're down to that. Over the next couple of weeks, I got a couple of other odd messages from her just asking if I was married and things like that, which I found really uncomfortable. I didn't want to talk about, for one thing, because I was in the process of a separation that I had not discussed with my children. And also this woman was a strange person that I didn't know. So I kind of deflected those a little bit and then didn't hear from her for a long while. I guess following on from that, I had spoken with because I had got so many odd messages, I ultimately spoke to Adam about that, told him about that on my mum's advice to say, "Hey, I'm just letting you know I've been getting these strange messages from this person who's mentioned you a couple of times." And from there, we sort of started back and forthing, and over several months, we sort of got to know each other that way. So it was a sort of strange irony at the end of the day.
Yeah, because she was stalking you because of Adam, and then that brought you together. So that is a strange irony.
Yeah, it's kind of strange because those initial comments are how we sort of got to talking and got to know each other. But of course, I didn't think I would ever hear from her again. But yeah, it didn't turn out that way.
So how did it escalate?
So it would have been close to a year later, and Adam and I had, by that stage, started dating. So we were in the very early stages of dating about a year later. And we'd hosted a gathering. It was our first kind of party that we'd hosted together, and we had friends and family over and things like that, and posted a few photos to Facebook. And later that night, we were just packing up, and I got this message request from clearly a fake account. It had sort of some play on words with using Adam's name and a couple of insults. And it was just this string of sort of vulgar, abusive messages to me. But at that stage, I did not know who had sent them. It was this strange name, and this. It was clear that it was someone who knew Adam or had in some way. But when I showed him the messages, that's who came to his mind fairly quickly. And within a couple of days, I was getting messages from her personal named account. So it was really obvious and clear who that person was. And that was the start of an escalating and, 3-year-old deal.
When you initially went to Adam to say, "I've got these weird messages on Facebook," just to let you know, what was his comment then about this individual?
At the very start?
Yes.
Yeah, so we were very loose acquaintances, so it was very sort of formal messages between us, and I told him, and he just basically apologized and said, "These are some of the reasons why she and I are no longer in each other's lives, and I'm embarrassed and I apologize," basically.
Right.
And I had said to my mum, who I was with at the time, like, "Oh, that's little bit awkward, like, because he's, one of the dads on the footy team. I'm like, oh, that
Yeah.
must be so embarrassing. Like, it just seemed like a bit of a weird, uncomfortable, awkward. He had sort of implied that she was a bit, intense, or I got the feeling maybe it wasn't the first time she'd approached people, but I never in my wildest dreams would have come up with what had happened. And in fact, I talk a lot about in my book, when I'm talking about stalking, about the way we joke about the term stalking, but I admit that back then I did it myself, because we used to say quite humorously that stalking got us talking. We used to say just because of that, but we sort of never imagined that real stalking would actually take place.
So when the messages escalated, you obviously show him and he was fairly certain that it was this individual. When they started coming from her actual personal account, what type of content was being said then?
So the stalking sort of went in two phases. So the first, I call it sort of the first 6 months, it was all private messages to me and other people. So the ones to me varied between just verbal insults about what I looked like and who I was and things like that, to sort of telling me, trying to talk about her previous life with Adam in explicit detail, if you get my drift, and sort of threatening to make contact with people in my family, which she also did do in that period. So she contacted my mum and invented sort of this confrontation between us. This is the whole story that didn't actually happen. And fortunately, my mum and I are very close, so she was aware of what was happening at that time. She also tracked down my ex-husband at that time, which also caused a lot of additional problems for me as well. Simultaneously, at the same time, back then, she was also sending Adam a lot of messages as well. So those messages sort of ranged from sort of angry, abusive rants and threats to sort of lies about me. And then that sort of stopped when we took a little bit of action, and then it restarted again, changing sort of the way it took place, and it was all just focused on me from then on.